here.
Johnston here.
Grillo here.
Lorick here.
Kavich here.
Zakowski here. Crowley here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
I hope you all had a chance to look at your minutes. If there's any questions, corrections, if not, a motion, please.
Dickman will make a motion that we approve the minutes of the October 10th, 2017 meeting.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye. Oh, sorry.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski abstains. I was out. Crowell abstains.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Moving on, significant common council actions. Carrie.
Council approved the following: an ordinance amending section 16.01 of the municipal code, an amendment to the official map for a portion of the northeast quarter and southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of section 1, which is the mapped unimproved right-of-way affecting the properties at 9349 South Nicholson Road, 1200 East Ryan Road, 9211R South Nicholson Road, and 9025 South Nicholson Road. An ordinance rezoning the properties at 7725 and 7869 South 13th Street from RS3 Single Family Residential and B3 Office and Professional Business to B4 Highway Business. An ordinance amending the conditions and restrictions to allow an indoor commercial recreation facility at 6925 South 6th Street. An ordinance approving a conditional use permit for water treatment facility, water storage, and high service distribution pump facilities on the properties at 9175, 9235, and 9325 South 5th Avenue, and 3953 and 3975 East American Avenue, and an ordinance adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1820, 1830, 1848, 1850, 1900, and 1920 West Drexel Avenue. Council also authorized staff to take preliminary steps to create a tax increment financing district for the properties at 610 West Rawson Avenue and 7001 and 7045 South 6th Street. Also to create a tax increment financing district for the properties at 330, 400, 410, and 500 West Drexel Avenue. And to create a tax increment financing district for the properties at 741 and 1001 West Ryan Road, as well as 9600, 9700, and 9900 South 13th Street. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. As you can see, we were busy at council, and this reflects on the Plan Commission 2 weeks earlier. So tonight's agenda is a little bit lighter. Under new business, first up, we have a consideration of a conditional use permit submitted by Storage Works LLC for a conditional use permit for self-storage facility on a property at 1901 East Rawson. Carrie?
The request is for a self-service storage facility on the property highlighted on the screen. This is a conceptual layout. There are proposed 404 10 by 20 storage units in 6 single-story buildings. 950 square feet of one portion of the building will be office space for leasing, retail sales, and restrooms. There would be 1 employee anticipated on site between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Following those hours, there would be a kiosk system and restrooms that would remain accessible 24/7 within that office space. No outdoor storage is allowed per code, and none has been requested. What are on your screen right now are a series of renderings showing the proposed buildings in the conditional use request. These are preliminary building designs. Code requires compliance with all architectural standards in section 17.1009, as well as requiring a 30-foot setback to all residential district lines, in addition to buffer requirements per code. There would be perimeter fencing with 1 key code gate on the north near the office. Security would be via web-based motion-activated cameras. They are anticipating an average of 5% of total units, or 20, utilized during the week, with up to 20%, or 81 units utilized during the weekends. Parking is shown in this conceptual layout on the north outside of the fence area. Customers within the facility would park in front of their individual storage units. Per code, the requirements are 1 space per employee, 1 space per 1,000 gross square feet of retail leasing and office space, one space for every 10 units for interior controlled access buildings, of which there are none in this proposal. And they are allowed to use one space in front of each unit, accessed via exterior roll-up door. All travel aisles and emergency access areas must remain completely unobstructed at all times. There are several concerns that were noted in the staff report. One is that the proposed CSM that was reviewed by the Plan Commission and the Common Council previously included a reconfiguration of the two lots here, one into a 5.66 acre lot and into a 4.34 acre lot, and also rezoned to LM1 light manufacturing based on information provided by VentureSpace for potential development of the property at 1901 East Rawson Avenue with commercial condo units. 1941 East Rawson Avenue was proposed to be purchased by a self-storage developer to develop a facility that would include, quote, an estimated 400 ambient and climate-controlled units, which could range in size from 10 by 10 to 12 by 35 and managed by a full-time manager in an on-site office. The VentureSpace representative provided a rationale for the rezone as properties as they were currently configured were not marketable. 1941 East Rawson Avenue was described as being too narrow to actually do something with. At that time, the concept for development presented what we are considering to be a misleading concept based on what is being presented for Plan Commission review tonight. The reason for this, the proposed CSM is no longer being pursued. Rather, the current configuration of the lots is proposed to remain. The concept no longer considers development potential of both of the lots. If the property at 1941 East Rawson Avenue was quote-unquote too narrow to develop in May, what has changed? Also, what kind of use or development would ultimately locate on that lot? The proposed development is not ambient and climate-controlled units in multiple sizes presented to the Plan Commission in May. Instead, they are conventional single-story row units of one size with no options for ambient or climate-controlled space. While the appropriateness for the type of use will be left to the Plan Commission to determine, the architecture and building materials in the proposal are not of the quality that staff would expect for the area. Recent proposals for self-storage unit facilities have included indoor climate-controlled buildings with architecture similar to commercial establishments, incorporating glass, brick, stone, parapets or two-story designs, canopies, etc., similar design elements. Traditional self-storage is no longer appropriate for a mixed-use area on a major thoroughfare and facing established residential neighborhoods. More quality materials should be used on all sides of the proposed buildings, and faux or spandrel windows should be avoided. As proposed, the buildings would not meet acceptable building materials or visible perimeter code requirements. In addition, landscaping on the concept plans is inadequate for screening or for meeting code requirements. Buffer areas are also required to incorporate extensive landscaping and/or fencing to adequately screen the development from residential areas. This proposed landscaping plan is not up to the standards staff would expect for the proposal given the location, code requirements, and recent approvals for comparable developments in the city. In terms of stormwater, there was a DNR exemption letter that strongly recommends obtaining a jurisdictional determination from the Army Corps of Engineers, which has not yet been received. They are determining that the wetlands that are depicted on this conceptual plan are not within DNR jurisdiction because it was a man-made pond. No details or plans for the proposed detention basin have been submitted to the engineering department for review as of tonight's meeting. Staff strongly recommends that the Plan Commission consider these considerations or these concerns when determining whether or not this proposed use is appropriate for this area. There is a suggested motion in your report, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Carrie. We have quite a few people wishing to speak, although it's not a public hearing. We're going to allow that. But first, does the applicant wish to say anything? Is the applicant here? Would you guys like to get up, name and address, give a brief presentation, and then we're going to take some comments and we'll open it up to the commission.
Yes, I'm Andrew Ream. I own Storage Works LLC, 161 West Wisconsin Ave, Suite 2J, Pewaukee, Wisconsin. I'm a local storage provider in the area and operator. I think that reading and also listening, it's almost kind of where do we begin by just kind of going through this, because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings in terms of how this was actually reviewed, and then also some of the comments that were made to it and things that are applicable and not. So I think from maybe from the beginning, I don't know how much time you guys want me to really spend on this, but I think what we're looking for is from the get-go is just the conditional use approval, and I don't want that to get forgotten, because comments like landscaping and some of these other aspects, our expectations is that the approval process, if we're fortunate enough for this to happen, would be that, yes, we're okay with your storage facility going there. On the next presentation through Plan Commission, that's when we'd see the level of detail in terms of landscaping, bush designs, tree designs, placement, density, sizes, those type of details that would actually come up and then be further discussed. I think on a macro level, that's what I'm looking for, is maybe some direction on an approval as an overall whole. I think probably where we part ways a little bit, at least in terms of how the assessment went forward, is that we're mixing two different distinct types of storage uses. So what we're compared to is like a 2-story climate-controlled, all-indoor type of a storage. This is not that type of a facility. So that's more of like an urban type dense type unit. So for example, someone with an apartment building that lives in an apartment have very little things. They don't mind pulling up to a building, getting out of a car parked, wheeling up a cart, pulling their stuff out of a cart, going through a long corridor, going up a freight elevator, going to a smaller unit and place it in. That's not our clientele per se. Our clientele would pull up in a pickup truck, store a boat, store a trailer, ATVs, larger pieces of furniture, things that you wouldn't take through a facility, through hallways and corridors and pieces like that. So I think that some of the comparison's sake, if it is a comparison, say if that's the type of facility that you would want here in terms of storage, that is for certain what we're not presenting. I don't know that it's a fair comparison to say that that's a type of a facility that we should be, because that's actually a total different business model, and it's actually a total different clientele that would meet. So some of the things that I've experienced sitting through other plan commissions is that always has been a big concern is where do doors face, materials, four-sided architecture, quality materials. I agree that's something that's very important and something that we'd like to present and show you what we've done before in the past and what we'd like to do here. But I think from some of these other aspects of, this is a commercial building in terms of how they're built, material selection wise. You're having masonry and natural materials. These aren't tin buildings with just a tin structure. So this is, for all intents and purposes, natural materials, which fits into the guidelines of a commercial or a multifamily type of building components. So I think from the overall aspect, it's hard to really respond to the assessment as a whole, because it doesn't really compare to what we're presenting nor what we're asking for. So it's almost like in some ways we're back to a square one type of a deal in terms of a proposal. And I'll probably spin it back to maybe the board if you want to focus on something more directly, or if you want to talk about materials as a whole, or really just about the feelings of this style of business model for storage facilities.
Well, I can tell you the 24 hours a day, that ain't gonna fly. You ain't gonna get 24 hours a day right there in your proposal. And I know that's a little off topic of materials, but that's a red flag right there. So there's a lot of holes. I think as we go forward, the council will have their chance for questions after the public. We'll invite the public up and have them comment in on it. So thank you. Just kind of hang tight.
Sure.
I'm going to bring the public up in kind of, I think, the order I received them. Try to keep your stuff to about 3 minutes, just to be respectful of time. It's not like we're going to put you on a hard and fast track, but do the best you can. First, Mr. Jim Nelson, he did not wish to speak, but he'd like his comments publicly read. pave paradise and put up a parking lot. I think that's a quote from a song. Ms. Dana Merkel did not wish to speak, but again would like the comment read publicly. I oppose the storage unit for the proximity to our homes, the changes to the green space, and the nocturnal light pollution. Next, Ms. Lonnie Benning, would you like to come up, please?
On the council, or commission. Yes,
name and address, please.
Lonnie Benning, 7254 South Delane Drive. So I'm the Camelot Trails Condominium Association president, so it's I'm representing the 90 owners that we have. Yes, I think I concur with our planner in being, we were quite confused to see that this was not only the layout of the property, which had been divided into two, and that was the last we were notified, and now it's back to the old configuration, but also the fact that it was the type of storage that it is. Quite alarmed. We also noted that the consulting letter on page 3 from Wetland Waterway did comment about the Army Corps of Engineer. Even though the DNR apparently gave some agreement, there were some wetland areas and labeled on the maps. And I didn't see anything there from the Army Corps of Engineer. So I was glad to see that. We are very concerned, of course, about the buffer, no matter what does go in here, in addition to the fact that what Mr. Freedy laid out to us in our prior meetings isn't anything like what we're looking at now. So we're quite confused about that. One of the huge concerns is the lighting would be the wattage, and I know that would come up later, but that is a huge concern because this literally is within 50 feet of the backyards of our homes, which is the patios of the homes. So the lighting is important. The business hours are a huge concern. I mean, 24/7 with cars driving. I mean, the whole thing is a paid parking lot. And so the cars 24/7 is not at all what we would have anticipated or what we would please beg for. The amount of pavement and the runoff, the detention, it's called a detention pit, or a detention pond, or basin, I guess it's called basin. The detention basin has questions. I mean, we're not adverse to it being there because it sounds like it may be needed. The size is not necessarily the issue, but certainly the aeration of it is a question we'd like to know about in terms of what it breeds, the safety of it, in terms of it being fenced in. Anything like that is a concern that wasn't addressed on the detention basin, that we hope you will ask for that type of information. The amount of pavement is obviously going to lead to quite a bit of runoff if it was approved in this way. So we're just very confused. We had hoped to hear from Mr. Freedy. Steve, our alderman, had recommended that he contact us. He did contact us to offer to sell us a portion of the property for $400,000, which we do not have for a few feet of property. That was all we had received. He also indicated to me he had DNR approval, even though the only thing he had sent me was the fact that the pond was not original water. So it was very misleading. We didn't have any word from the people who apparently do own this business at all. So I wanted to make that part of the records. So that's it. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have a couple more to read into the record, if you bear with me as I go through these. Joan Lemke does not wish to speak, but would like her comments publicly read. She states, I do not want the property values to go down. Marlene Klug does not wish to speak, but I do have a comment and she'd like it made part of the record. When making decisions, please consider current longtime residents. Ms. Renee Steinbeck also would like her publicly read. And she says, I am concerned about the amount of light being installed and also the water runoff for the homes in the area. And I believe this is the last one to be read into the record. Jennifer Hagel does not wish to speak, but would like her comments publicly read. Two-part question. Is this the same LLC that tried to build a storage facility in McGuanago? And what was the outcome, pass or fail? Why? So that we can bring up later, but that's what I have. Next to speak, I have Mr. David Howard.
Hello, everyone.
Name and address, please.
My name is David Howard, 7237 South Delane Drive, Unit 5. It's bordering the property. And I just like to say that I just don't want this thing to lead to a slum condition. And you put it up in the wrong way, and it may lead to that eventually. I've seen storage facilities that had sort of a blue roof on it, and they look actually pretty nice. But I don't expect to have that quality, but it'd be nice if it didn't lead to a slum area. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, there's no indication, so Mr. Jim Crick, would you like to speak, sir? Or do you just want it read in?
Name is Jim Crick. I live at 7254 South Delane. I have a couple of concerns. I'm opposed to the development. I have a concern about the impact on the property value of the surrounding area, the condominium. I have the retention basin is. I think it's huge. I have concerns about smells, bugs, runoff, especially concerning our properties, which is right next door to this. Actually be about 75 feet away from it. I think the traffic 24/7 would be an issue. If you visit our condominium in the evening or at night, you see the impact of the lights from Piggly Wiggly, which is just north of us, and there's 3 huge lights that shine directly into our yards. I have a concern that this would be repeated. Now we would have lights from the north and from the west, so that would be a concern. I believe the report that the commission prepared or the staff prepared was very complete and probably addresses any other issues that I may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, I have Alderman Stephen Kurkowski, First District, wishes to speak. And I think I got everybody after that. I think you were last.
Good evening, Steve Kurkowski, 1110 East Milwaukee Avenue, First District Alderman. I'm not going to repeat what the city planner put in her report, although I do hope that everybody's read it in its entirety, because I think Carrie paraphrased a couple of paragraphs for time's sake. But I'd like to say that I didn't find a positive comment in any of the paragraphs in the report. And it goes back to, I apologize if some of the mayor and the aldermen have heard these comments before, and those in attendance, but back when this entire project started, I received complaints about what was going on there, and come to find out that the new owners had started to do some work on the property and gotten permission from the county, which meant, and I subsequently learned that there was a portion of the property that they got permission from the county, and that was fine, but there's property off Rawson Avenue that you need permission from the city, and somebody from engineering had to go over there and tell them to stop what they're doing. As far as the lack of contact with the neighbors, I did suggest that happen, and I think there was a very meager attempt by the developers or the owners to do that. And I mentioned that earlier because when we had concerns by the neighbors for the apartment development at Pennsylvania and Drexel, the developers met with the neighbors. There were a lot of concerns, and there might have been 12, 15 different problems that the neighbors had with the development. And to my recollection, they addressed every concern that the neighbors had. And to this date, I have not received any calls from any of the neighbors that the developers are reneging on anything that they're doing. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't any issues, but if there are, they're taking care of them with the developer, excuse me, and they're working things out. That doesn't seem to be the case here. If you recall, we rezoned this property LM1 so that there could be this condo-type development of some sort, along with the self-storage. And self-storage, I understand, is an M1 zoning, but it is also allowed in LM1. But we specifically made this LM1 to accommodate the split in the properties. And now we've gone back to just having a self-storage facility. And the changes that have occurred here are just kind of, I guess they're frustrating, they're worrisome. And to me, that just creates serious concerns by the developer about the transparency and the commitment to going forward with what they really want to do. You know, sometimes in my previous line of work, you get that gut feeling that sometimes something just ain't right. And I had it the night, even though we allowed it to be rezoned LM1, I mentioned I had a gut feeling that, you know, I didn't like what I was seeing. But after reading the Plan Commission report, I feel even worse about this. The developer got up, and I assume he had read the Plan Commission report or had access to what was going to be said tonight. And coming forward knowing that the planner was not exactly happy with what he wanted to do, took his time to stand here and say, well, we're not going to do this. That's not our model. We're going to do this. It's not our model. We're going to talk about things later down the road, and we'll talk about buffers and landscaping, this and that and everything. And he feels like we're back at square one. I do too. I would like, when somebody comes forward to decide what they want to build and have as much opposition to this as we have with the neighbors, to try and cover all the bases, have everything worked out, not have a report like tonight that has so many open-ended questions and concerns. And I still don't know what he wants to do. I don't know what his model is, because he had an opportunity to try and get that started tonight with saying, we want to do this, we don't want to do this, no, we don't want to do that, that's not our model. I'm not happy with it just because of everything that has been said by the planner in her report. And they haven't worked with the neighbors to try and, massage this a little bit so that everybody can be happy, or at least live with what they want to do. So my request by the Plan Commission is, if there's a motion, is to deny the conditional use permit for tonight and let them come back, square one. Now they got an entire piece of property to put this self-storage facility on, because the stuff is too narrow for future development. Whether they move it over or they do something, but now they're not splitting it. They got a big piece of property to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anybody else wishing to say anything before I have the commission weigh in? Okay, I'll open it up to the commission for questions, comments. Pat, you're first.
Sure. I guess looking for a little direction from Carrie, the applicant's position of, let's just focus on the conditional use and not a lot of concern at this time for a lot of details that we have issues with. Do we not need to go even, I mean, there's a lot of things we have problems with, starting with the 24 hours.
Yeah,
Mayor, as you said, on the surface, and we put other self-storage up. We've dealt with, we got a FedEx plant that there wasn't a single neighbor that wants there that's going up, that, you know, we just had to work through what was there. So the fact that the neighbors don't necessarily want it doesn't mean that we can't put a self-storage there, but it means that we've really got to make it fit. And right now it's not even close. So with all the details being off, Carrie, are we, I mean, to the applicant said, let's just talk about the conditional use, which really doesn't get anywhere because we're telling them that all the details don't fit.
So in every conditional use request, we do have a requirement for conceptual plans. In this case, because there are specific concerns with regard to what's going on in the property, I would say that everything that's been raised is fair game. Now, when we say that they have to meet architectural standards and things like that, yeah, those things can somewhat be handled at a later date, and we have done that previously. But we have ultimate concerns for the development of the property. It's not just the architecture, although that is a big problem. We do need to make sure that we are adhering to greater standards. And when I was talking about the other examples of self-storage that we've had brought forth, they have incorporated those traditional types of self-storage units in addition to the indoor facilities that we've seen. So it's a combination that we've seen in recent submissions. So I just want to clarify that. As far as the landscaping, those kinds of details, yes, those details are going to be reviewed at a later date. However, if the concept doesn't even take into consideration the code requirements, and we don't necessarily see that the plans would have enough room for the type of landscaping that would need to go in, that's a concern. All of these things could be incorporated into conditions and restrictions, which is why they're brought up. So yes, there are certain things that are handled for Plan Commission review at a later date. However, the requirements for compliance are incorporated into conditions and restrictions.
I guess with that answer, and my question would be to the applicant, with the fact that I feel there's some overwhelming resistance to a 24-hour self-storage the way it's set up. Now the lot that appears to be possibly now that it could be laid out differently or tackled differently, as it's not a two business entity. Is that something the applicant wants to go back and look at before we go any further?
Before we get into that, I just want to clarify that this has always been 2 lots. What was presented for the Plan Commission and Council's consideration back in May was a reconfiguration of the 2 lots, which is no longer being pursued.
Right.
So that was where we were saying, well, this is a complete change from what was presented. Additionally, what was presented said indoor climate controlled, ambient controlled kind of storage facility, which led us to think these are going to be indoor units, or at least a combination. So that's where where did this come from kind of change. And again, when the rezone and the CSM were presented, they were presented with the rationale that the lots as currently configured aren't usable. Well, if they weren't usable then, why are they suddenly usable now? And we had an overall development plan for both of the lots at the time of rezone and CSM, which we no longer have. So again, it's the holistic viewpoint of what's going to happen on both of these developments. Now, that's not necessarily what's going to happen with this conditional use because it's just for one of the lots. But it is still a consideration that we have as staff because it was presented as an overall development plan originally.
Mayor, then just as we all weigh in, pretty unattractive couple of lots there that I don't know what the exact use is ever going to be. So I think we need to take a close look and see if there is something there, but we're not even close at this point.
I would agree with you. There's a lot going on from what was originally proposed. Matter of fact, it's completely different from what was offered the first time around. So I agree. I don't think, in my opinion, it's appropriate to go forward on it. But I'm gonna no. So again, that's my opinion from what I'm seeing right now. Again, we had dealt with storage units in the past. We had 2 come through this city. I think we were all pretty well mind focused on that type of product we were going to get. And again, that's how the product was described. And again, it incorporated both lots with a development plan. Now there's no development plan, and we could be left with another lot. But again, I'll stop talking now. I'll let the rest of the commissioners weigh in. Okay, Fred?
I agree with Pat. I'm a little concerned that now we're only handling one lot, and what happens to the other lot? It could be hanging out there for years, not developed. And if we're, if we're going to develop that whole facility, I think we need to have an idea of the whole concept of both lot 1 and 2, and not just break it up and leave a piece hanging in there. And plus, I agree with the staff's report. I was a little concerned about really not meeting our criteria that we've established for the city as far as a quality development.
Commissioner Chandler?
I have questions for the applicant. Do you want me to wait?
Bring
We
'em
can-
up.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand where we started to today, because they're so different. So can you just provide a little more information on why the reconfiguration is not being pursued or looking to pursue the CSM, et cetera?
Actually, I'm going to ask Mike for you to come up and address that one, if that's okay. The relationship that we have is that I am purchasing the land as the storage operator, so I'm a developer of storage facilities. Mike is developing the site as a whole and selling me parcel.
Thank you very much.
Name and address for the record.
I'm sorry, Mike O'Freedy, and the address is 4191 Lakeland Drive in Neshota, Wisconsin. I think there was a total misunderstanding on the concept of the subdivision of the lot. This has been discussed, and I'm not sure why it hasn't gotten this far and gotten to you. The CSM that was reviewed and approved that reconfigured the 2 lots is still being pursued. The issue was that in order to record the new CSM, we needed to get the signature of the current property owner, since we don't own the property yet. And because there's a mortgage on the property, we needed to get a signature of the mortgage holder. The current property owner signed the new CSM, but his mortgage holder, the bank, would not sign the new CSM because they said that it could affect the value of the property, which is the 2-lot configuration that currently exists. So they weren't prepared to sign the new CSM. So we couldn't actually record. We attempted to record the new CSM, but we were blocked from doing so because of the mortgage holder with the current owner. So we decided maybe the best approach to take would be to work through an approval process and get to the point where we can actually purchase the property. That removes the mortgage holder from the equation, and then as the new property owner, we could then sign the new CSM and get it recorded. So
You're asking us to approve something that may or may never happen?
well, no,
That's That's a stretch.
Well, the issue is, if the conditional use is approved, and then we can purchase the property, then we have control and we can record the new CSM. If, I don't know, and again, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but I'm assuming that you can have a condition on approval of the development plan based on the new CSM being recorded. You know, we're not trying to change the plan. We're not trying to do anything different. We're being blocked from proceeding with the plan by a party that isn't part of this. Now, what we did with the original concept was we were looking at the two lots, and it was going to be self-storage on the east lot and commercial condominiums on the west lot. And based on initial feedback that we got as we went through the process, that there were concerns about the self-storage facility being up adjacent to the condominiums to the east, the decision was made to put the self-storage facility on the western lot, farther away from the residential area, and that we would create green space down adjacent to the condominiums, the residential condominiums, and then look at doing the commercial condominiums on the northern half of the eastern lot. So, but we're not far enough along in our design process to present the commercial condominiums on the north half. But that, I mean, we've got, you know, a preliminary plan to do that. We're just not, you know, Venture Space, we're not there yet. But Storage Works, they're looking at moving forward with their plan. So the plan is the same that's been submitted since the very beginning. It's about 400 units. The main difference is that the storage units have been shifted farther away from the residential, and that the civil engineers attempted to create more green space between the residential condominiums and where the commercial buildings would be. So, you know, we're not sure what you can and can't do in terms of helping us get through the process where we can record the CSM. But the CSM has been approved. We just simply need to record it now in order to move forward. So, I mean, and again, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but I'm assuming that somewhere in this process, you can put as a requirement that the CSM has to be recorded. And, you know, and then, you know, with all of the other concerns regarding landscaping, you know, that's, you know, I understand that you'll have the opportunity, the Plan Commission will have the opportunity to work through all those details. Just like when we get farther in our commercial condominium plan, you know, we'll be coming through and we'll be asking for a conditional use permit, and we'll then be working through the design of that development. But the first thing that we need to do is know that we can actually move forward with our development plans in order to purchase the property. Because right now, we don't have control over the property. So we need to know that we can actually move forward before we'll purchase the property. Otherwise, we buy the property, we don't get approval, now what do we do? So that's why this whole process from the very beginning has been a step-by-step deliberate approach to make sure that we're doing what you need, we're following the appropriate steps, and not just jumping in, buying the property, and then if things don't go well, now what do we do? So we've attempted.
Sir, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Why haven't you had a chance to reach out and engage with the neighbors other than asking them if they want to put up the $400,000 for the parcel of land?
Well,
you want to engage them from the beginning, and at our last plan commission meeting, we asked as a plan commission, please engage
Sure.
the neighbors. They need to be part of this process.
And I mean, again, I'm not the self-storage developer, so I'm not the one to engage them, because at this point, all I've been doing is looking at rezoning the property, and again, going back, it was at the request of the city to rezone it to LM1. You know, that's where it originally started. I met with Doug Seymour and I said, we're looking at this property. This is what we're thinking. What do we need to do? And he said, change the zoning to LM1. And I said, okay. Now we've got these, it's a 2-lot parcel, and one of the lots is way too small to do anything with, and it was like,
Correct you, the city wouldn't request it to be changed. The property owner would have to do it.
Yeah.
Or the real estate holding company that's representing the owner.
yeah.
But the city would not do that on a private lot.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. If I said recommend, misused the word, he was like, you know, this is what you can do. And then there was the talk about reconfiguring the lot lines so that they were both more usable. So again, I've just been trying to, in essence, get the foundation set up and so that development plans can proceed. Because without knowing what's it gonna be zoned, without knowing what the lot lines are gonna be, you know, we have no idea how to design anything. So, you know, up to this point, we're still trying to get the baseline established. And now, you know, Storage Works, you know, I'm sure that, you know, they intend on, okay, now we need to get into the nitty-gritty. Now we need to talk to people and figure out what do we have to do for design and layout and doors and trees and all of that. And that's where questions can be answered. And just like for us, whenever we get around to our commercial condominium development, it'll be the same thing. Okay, what are the concerns? What do we need to do? But we're not even there yet because we don't even know if we can move forward. What we need is, can we move forward?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chandler, other questions?
Yes, so I hear what you're saying, that you want to move forward, but then I also heard with the introduction that you already have the setup the way you want it, 1 story, certain conditions. So I'm still not clear if you're proceeding forward as was suggested prior to today or not, because even the facility just sounds different than what we discussed.
Well, to my understanding, that's one of the pieces I was kind of leading with a little bit, is that from my perspective, it hasn't changed. This has always been a storage facility type use. It's always had aisleways and a setup similar to that. So whether the buildings are running north, south, east, west, it's always the concept the same, where you have linear buildings, alleyways in between, garage doors access through a drive-to scenario, security gated access. So that has been one of the baselines that I've really been working under. And hearing from on the comments on the plan, I guess the plan review, is that, you know, 2-story indoor climate controlled is just a complete different animal. So I'm a little bit taken aback from how this model then works into that. I understand that. I think it's spurred from the ambient, and it's probably just a misunderstanding of what ambient and climate control is.
I think it can be a hybrid of both. I mean, I think we all understand the concept of storage with linear buildings.
And
But the linear buildings, they don't even scratch the surface of what our requirements are.
Well, in terms of linear buildings also be climate controlled, you can actually do those as climate controlled also with separate drive-up access. So I think that's one of the pieces I'm trying to get some clarity onto. So in terms of what the expectations really are, I think that from my perspective, also I'd like to not necessarily address the condominium, because I know, but I want them to know that by no means any disrespect to any of the residents around here of why I didn't particularly reach out to anyone. For me, it's a step-by-step process, kind of like what Mike was saying, is that I'm at a macro level. Yes, can we do this? Generally, that looks like that. And then the details that come after that that are important to the area residents of lighting, 24 hours, what's up for, quite frankly, we don't have to do it 24 hours. So as surprising as that sounds, that's some of the feedback that I'm looking at, which then changes maybe what time the lights turn off, how is that pond fenced. Those are all pieces that I'm normally used to dealing with how to problem solve. One of the things that I cannot problem solve with when I walk into a plan commission is that, quite frankly, if they just don't want to do it. That's something that I can't overcome when, and I'm not saying that as a good or a bad, but it's something I'm always trying to feel out is that will a municipality, will a board approve the macro concept of what we're looking at there? And, sometimes the answer is yes. And, unfortunately, sometimes for me, the answer is no. I'm always hoping it to be a yes, because I think I put together a quality product, but that's what I'm trying to source out with this type of approval.
Okay.
All the other details can get worked through the plan commission and site development process, but it's kind of backwards in a lot of ways. Is that I feel like if I reach out to everybody, fully develop a site, and I get a comment that says we need this to be a 2-story climate control building, not only it puts me in a position where I promise everything to area neighbors that cannot be done, but it also wastes my time, theirs, and everyone else on the board. So from an incremental position, I feel like that's what we're looking for.
So when you say macro concept, can you give a little more details of what you know versus what you don't know? Because you called out everything, well, not everything, quite a few of the concerns of the neighbors. So it sounds like, and I want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly, you don't have feedback for the neighbors because you're at a macro concept level. So I just want to understand what that
I missed the
means.
first part. I'm sorry.
What is macro concept level? You said
I
you're
think
at a macro.
what I would generalize macro is that, very simply put, do you like my development from a storage facility aspect with aisleways, doors on the outside, and higher end materials that's not tin? Is that something that's an acceptable use that would be approved? And I think that, my expectation was the answer would hopefully be yes, but these are the things we're concerned about. And then I can go back and also work with our designers and also work with the area residents.
I mean, I think if I can interject, I think that's where we started, that if I don't have a problem with a storage facility on that site. I have a problem with what we've seen proposed so far for the storage facility. So if that's answering your question, I think it's a difficult site. I think the second piece coming kind of ties it together if that really happens. I understand. I think, Gary, we put in conditional use to, in terms of approving it, due to their financing issue. We've gone through that before. I don't think that that's a real issue. We'd have to figure out how we did that, but I think you need to understand that if we say, yeah, the storage facility, I don't have a problem with that, but there's a lot of concerns about how your storage facility becomes the one that we would approve. And you take that all into consideration where you want to go with this, if that answers your question. Macro, I get it, storage facility, but we're way off in how we get there.
Right, and I think probably just a little bit further definition is that I think with the planners' comments came back is that 2-story climate controlled, that's one thing that this product would not be. So it would not grow a second story and somehow find a business model around that. It's still, you can see the renderings on your packets, then that's generally what it looks like, and maybe masonry gets increased here or there, or maybe a window gets added here or there, or something along those lines. But as an overall aspect, it's still what it is.
Anything more, Chauncey? Okay. Let's go to my left. Fred.
He does it all the time. Try Wally.
Wally.
I think the comments that have been brought up so far have been very pertinent. I think especially what we just talked about, what we expected to see and what we are seeing is totally different. I even have a concern that if we make this conditional use for a storage unit, that it's even going to occur. I just have my doubt about the whole project. And I heard the scenario of why we're at the point we are based on the gentleman that just gave this discussion. And I guess I got to ask Carrie. Carrie, had you heard any of this before? Because you did a great job, by the way, of writing it up for us.
I understood, based on the conversations, that there was an issue with getting that CSM signed by the mortgage holder. But I guess my understanding was, until we figured that out, we're not gonna pursue that anymore. We're just gonna go forward with this because the developer wants to get started on the self-storage. So while we still had concerns and questions, the direction was put it to the Plan Commission as proposed. I do not have any level of assurance that these proposed plans fit in with that proposed CSM. So until I know that, I wouldn't know how to incorporate a condition of approval that says the CSM has to be recorded prior to developing this lot, because I don't know that they mesh.
I agree with Carrie, and I am not in favor of going that route. We have a lot of things we've established here. There's a lot of things we don't know, and we're supposed to make a decision on what we don't know. It just doesn't seem a pertinent thing to do for me. That's my opinion. The rest of the council can weigh in. But there's too much unknown here. And again, the bank still has to sign off on this deal. We get that. Happens here and there. We've never heard directly from the property owner that requested this. And obviously he wants to sell his property, and he's allowed to do that.
No, it was just a misunderstanding from the mortgage holder's perspective about what it was that they were being asked to sign. When I spoke to them, they seemed to be clear on it. But that was the last I heard about it. So my understanding was we're abandoning the CSM and we're going to pursue the lot configuration as is. So if the CSM is still going to be pursued, I need to have some assurance that this plan, even though it's conceptual, fits in with that proposed CSM.
Well, again, a lot of unknowns. So we're looking at the possibility of condos someday, one day. How far back they go. They're going to be single story because the applicant said there'll be nothing two-story. So we're in the single story condos. No, not yet. And you got to come up to the mic anyways. This is just, it's a mess. And there's no reflection on my staff. This is not the correct way to conduct business. We've been through some stuff where there's some unknowns, but this one's had a lot of time, and we percolated on this one for a long time to even get to this point, and then to have it come up this way. Carrie?
Now, I just want to clarify that staff does feel that moving the self-storage portion to the west makes more sense.
I agree, and I thank you for doing that. I think that was very considerate to open up that green space and what have you. I personally, I think their product's probably a fine product, but for our standards, I really have my doubts, given the number of units, that you can ever meet the masonry standards going forward. I don't know that. I'm not an engineer, but I think it's going to be difficult. So, Wally, I'll give it back to you. It was your floor.
Oh, I think you presented it very well. I feel the same way. There are just so many open items in here that I just don't feel comfortable with. And I'll say again, I even have my doubt that it'll ever be developed even to the macro, use the macro plan. I'm just unsure of it. Let's put it that way.
Commissioner Johnston, anything?
It's been covered.
Anything on the wetlands with the Army Corps of Engineers? Can you bring us up? Are we cool with that or no? Even that portion of it?
To my understanding, the wetland issue is because there is a man-made pond on the site, and it's their determination on, can they fill that in? Why you'd want to fill in a pond and construct over top of it is a whole different topic. But grading-wise, that creates some issues with long, narrow buildings going down a steep slope. If you comment about the stormwater pond, that is something that is needed for the site. That anything over half acre of impervious, we need to have the detention there. That'll contain the runoff from the site, slow the water down. So that is all a good thing for the site and for the neighbors to have that there. So just a lot of concerns overall with the development.
Brian, they don't have aerators in there either, right? On the
They're not required to have
Typically,
aerators on them.
right, I didn't think so.
Commissioner Carrillo? Commissioner Lorick?
I think everything's been covered pretty well, concern-wise.
Guzekowski?
And said,
Okay. Anything else, guys? Pat, any last
I
comments?
guess the question would just be, where are we going with it? I mean, we can propose and vote against. We can hold and let them go back to staff to try and get closer. I mean, where do we want to go with it would be my question, Mayor. And either or, does that cause any difficulties either for staff or for the applicant?
You know, I'm sorry, you wanted to speak, sir. If you'd like to come up, please, name and address.
Michael Beaumont. I live at 9720 West National Avenue in West Dallas. My family and I started this business well over 30 years ago. By a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that we put into the company. And it was all about the neighbors, man. It's all about, communicating with the neighbors, and I feel you on that. And I want to speak to the buyer, and please communicate with the neighbors, because those are the ones that pay everybody's taxes, that's the key, the neighbors, the people. So I'm here just selling the property, that's it. And I would hope that the buyer communicates with the neighbors and intertwines with them, because I've always been about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, Carrie, just kind of bring us up to speed. A hold or a denial will take them right back to square one, and they can come back with this when it's more complete.
Is there, better answer?
So, okay, let's explore those two options. If you hold the item, we can hold it until such time as they can provide the information necessary to bring it back to Plan Commission. We can do that. If the Plan Commission wishes to not recommend approval, you can certainly do that as well. If you choose to go that route, then you proceed with the suggested motion and then you vote in the negative. What that means for the applicant is the plans would have to change substantially in order to bring them back to the Plan Commission for a subsequent review. Or if they want to try again with this plan, this exact same plan, they'd have to wait a year.
So there you have it.
Carrie, let me ask a question. Okay, you recommended here that we, first of all, make the motion as presented here, and then and then second, and then we would vote against it if we don't want it. But we just can't say right off the bat that we don't recommend it at all as part of our motion. There's two different things there.
You need to make a motion in the affirmative
Vote
and
negative.
then vote
Vote negative.
against. So
Just different way of saying thing.
technically a motion to deny is improper legally, so that's why you make the motion in the affirmative and vote nay. But if the commission wishes to hold it, that is still an option. We wouldn't necessarily say, oh, we'll come back in 2 weeks, because I don't necessarily think that this issue can be resolved in 2 weeks. So that is also a concern too, about how long do we hold the item before it's either considered done or we just bring it back to the Plan Commission for an actual decision.
If we hold it, doesn't that kind of put it in the applicant's lap how they bring it back?
Right, but
I mean, then does the applicant have a preference, knowing that as it stands right now, it probably is difficult to pass? They'd rather see it. Or is the commission feeling differently? I think holding it gives them more options.
It doesn't close the door on them. I do agree. And to going back to Pat's comment, the one thing you have to understand is it's an appropriate site for self-storage. Now, get this one out of your mind or whatever it may be, but if it's appropriate, but you got to work through the details of getting that, Pat said it better, getting that building the way we want it here in Oak Creek, then a hold's appropriate. If you think self-storage should never go there, then.
So did I hear correctly, though, if we do motion and vote, and if it does get denied, they don't have to wait a year if they completely change their plans?
That is correct.
more
They
of
need
what
to
we're looking for.
substantially change the plans in order for it to come back to the Plan Commission. If they don't substantially change the plans and they want to go forward, they'd have to wait a year to represent these exact plans.
I have a question for the applicant to see if you're open to change, because that'll decide how this motion
I'd prefer to hold.
Yeah, I would, if I were in his position.
It's up to the mayor.
Mayor
then.
can do it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Someone has a comment.
Come on up, sir. Name and address again, please. Yeah, just so when they're doing the minutes, they can figure out
Sure.
who's speaking.
Yeah, Michael Freedy, 4191 Lakeland Drive, Neshota, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
So if we can actually get the mortgage holder to sign the new CSM, how much does that resolve the issues that you feel are being left on the table?
I think it then comes down to, in my opinion, the building components and landscaping and layout and all the things that I think staff you would have to work through and get a more favorable response.
You know, because again, we have the CSM and it's been signed by Russell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can work with Russell and see if we can get the bank to sign the darn document.
I think that's the first step. If you
Yeah.
get that done, you're a lot closer to us having something we feel comfortable even voting on.
Yeah,
Okay?
but we definitely got to get it cleaner than what we've been talking about tonight.
Because again, that's been the intent, and we just felt that the easiest way to do it would be to get ownership of the property. But if we need to do the CSM ahead of time, we'll work with
I
Russell
think
to,
if you get that CSM and then your proposal has more of the both entities' development of what the secondary phase would be actually shown to us and to the neighbors and made sense and we could get our hands around, I think you'd have at least an opportunity.
okay, thanks.
Thank you. Again, I would move, I would hold it. Have them come back at an appropriate time. Hopefully they sort out their lien holder. They come back and they confer with staff to have a better vision of what we're gonna see. No, I don't think we gotta put a time frame on it.
Staff will work with the
Staff will
applicants on
continue to
timing.
work with them.
So
Dan
directed
puts it on
help?
hold.
We'll direct staff to work with them on a hold.
Okay.
Thank you all. I'm sure we can come to a means or an understanding one way or another, but just too many open-ended questions, and obviously you could see everybody was a little hesitant as to what they were getting here. So we want to do the right thing by everybody. That includes the neighbors, the current property owners, and of course the applicant too, as well as every other resident of this city that's going to benefit from it. Sir, would you like to say one last thing? Name and address again, please.
David Howard, 7237 South Delane Drive, Unit 5. I'm a little, I don't know about what we're talking about, CSM against CSM. The one we're working with that is there now is one lot, and we're changing it to 2 lots for the CSM?
Carrie, you want to?
Sure, I'll clarify that. The property is currently 2 lots. The certified survey map would reconfigure those lots so that they're more equal size, they're more linear. Right now, the lot that is being proposed for the development of the self-storage is kind of an L-shaped lot, with the remainder being a smaller portion. So the CSM or certified survey map would make the lots more regular. They would be 2 rectangles of roughly equivalent size.
So there's no detachment or attachment necessary? There's nothing, no leftovers?
No, there would be no remnant parcels.
And what are they selling? They want to sell?
It would be 2 lots, 2 regular lots for development.
No, what was the $400,000 for?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. Okay, then, that's fine.
Right. Thank you. Okay. We will move on to B, plan review for building plan submitted by Blifford Lumber for a yard office and saw room at the property at 6826 South 10th. Carrie, are you prepared for this one?
Yes. The request is for a 36-foot by 24-foot office break room and cutting room building on the property that is shown in red. Now, this is not the property that has the Bliffert main building toward the road. This is in the back portion of the property, accessed from 10th. Here's the site plan showing the overall development of the parcel as it exists right now, plus the proposed building, which you'll see is in the southwest corner over off of 10th Street. It is a small building compared to what is existing on the property. All setbacks appear to be met with this proposal. Staff would like to acknowledge and thank the applicant for working closely with the water utility to relocate the building such that it's outside of all required easements. There are no landscape plans that have been submitted, you'll notice, and that's because this is proposed on existing impervious surface. There are no mechanical units shown. However, if there are going to be mechanical units for the building, and we anticipate there will be, all ground building and rooftop units, transformers, and utility boxes are required to be screened. Now, of course, this is from the road. This is at the end of a cul-de-sac road, so it's not like these utilities would be seen except by the neighboring properties. This is in an M1 district, and it is within the North Branch. Again, no new trash enclosures are proposed, so if there are, they would be required to meet code requirements. Also, no lighting plans for exterior building lighting, so if there are going to be wall packs on this building, they would have to go through the electrical inspector for permitting. In terms of the building itself, the proposal is for a small building that would be that would incorporate exterior building materials of fiber cement, lap, and panel siding. It's unclear from these plans whether or not it's going to be a metal roof or a shingle roof. There was a little bit of there was a change in between the buildings, so I'm not, or in between the plans, so I'm not sure which exactly they're proposing. But as far as the fiber cement is concerned, per code, the use of such products require a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission. Also, you need to have a 3/4 majority approval because code requires the facade of manufacturing, commercial, office, institutional, or park building to be finished with an aesthetically pleasing material, a minimum of 75% of the visible perimeter for which shall be finished with an acceptable glass, brick, or decorative masonry material. We've gone through this before. If the Plan Commission is comfortable with the use of fiber cement and with a 3/4 majority, they can determine that this meets the minimum requirements for glass, brick, or decorative masonry material. I will say that the visible perimeter is, again, measured from the end of a dead-end road, so just keep that in mind. If the Plan Commission is comfortable with the proposal, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans for the yard, office, and cutting room building located at 6826 South 10th Street, subject to conditions 1 through 6. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Is the applicant here? Would they like to say a few words quickly or briefly and maybe answer some questions before they're asked?
Josh Brown, 6826 South 13th Street. As far as the roof goes, right now we do have it as asphalt shingles, and we are open to doing a metal roof like we did at the building on 13th Street. The materials are very similar to what this commission approved on 13th Street, but minus the cedar upper that we have on that building. There will be exterior lighting, and of course we'll meet all electrical requirements.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to clarify that staff doesn't have necessarily a preference for a shingle versus metal roof. It was just a conflict between the plans.
Thank you. We'll open it up from questions, comments from the commission. Fred?
I have a question about the cutting room. What are you actually going to perform in that room?
It'll have a table saw and just a like a miter box, just a chop saw. So we have that currently in other areas, and this is going to make it a lot safer.
Are you going to have the break room then separated from this cutting area?
Yeah, if you can
It's
see
on
the
the
floor
screen.
plan, the office and restroom will be completely separate from the cutting room. There'll be 2 overhead doors that open, and a dust collection. So when everything's taking place, there's not going to be any hazardous materials.
Thank you.
Chauncey?
A quick question. So these operations, where are they happening now? Where are they being moved from?
In some of the other buildings, the table saw was located in one building, and then our chop saw was in another building, so we're trying to consolidate.
And do you have any actual renderings with the colors or the materials? Is it similar to the buildings that are already there?
Correct, not at this time, but the building at the road on 13th Street is mostly, the lower is gray and the upper is the pre-finished cedar. This building will be mostly gray with blue trim. It'll be consistent with, or not blue, I'm not sure yet, but it'll be consistent with the building up on 13th Street.
And why the, what is it called, fiber cement?
So that's like a James Hardy product, if you've heard of that before. It's a fiber cement lap siding. It has a wood grain on it. Again, very similar to the product that we used on the lower portion of the building, other building.
Thank you.
Chris, anything?
Just to comment that, looking at where it's placed on the, on the main area, the lot back there, it can't be seen hardly from 13th Street, and hardly anybody goes down to 10th Street with the cul-de-sac, so it's only the neighbors. So I'm in agreement that this is fine the way it is.
I agree, so, seeing no further questions or comments, motion.
Oracle move that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans for the yard, office, and cutting room building located at 6826 South 10th Street with the following conditions. Number 1, that all building and fire codes are met. Number 2, that all revised plans, site, building, lighting, details, elevations, etc., are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. 3, that all mechanical equipment, ground, building, and rooftop is screened from view. 4, that the final site grading and drainage plans are approved by the engineering department. 5, that the final photometric and lighting plan is approved by the electrical inspector prior to the issuance of building permits. And number 6, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility.
Kuzikowski, second.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye. Crowell, aye.
Seibert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank
Good
you,
luck.
Carrie.
Good luck. Next up, certified survey map submitted by Kevin Kennedy, Walden OC LLC, combining the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1848, 1850, and 1900 West Drexel, and 1700 South Kia Way, formerly 1830R West Drexel Avenue. Carrie.
The proposal is to combine these parcels into one for development purposes. It's in advance of pursuing a mixed-use development on the property. We do not have plans for that as such. They are currently being developed. And this is what the proposed parcel would look like following consolidation. It would be in excess of 27 acres, and this is south of IKEA. The wetlands are shown, however, some are missing, and that's due per a report that was filed separately, showing individual wetlands that are on the property. Even if they are going to be filled with a wetland permit, they should be located on the CSM. As should also be included floodplain and floodway areas. It's just a small portion of the southwest corner that would be affected by the floodplain and floodway, but it should be shown on the map. There was one comment received from the utility that laterals should be abandoned, and the applicant should work closely with the water and sewer utility to make sure that that occurs. If the Plan Commission is comfortable with the proposal for the consolidation of these properties, the suggested motion is that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Kevin Kennedy, Walden OC LLC, for the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1848, 1850, and 1900 West Drexel Avenue, and 7700 South IKEA Way be approved, subject to conditions 1 through 4. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. This time, does the applicant have any comments before the commission throws questions out there? Okay, we'll open it to the commission for Comments, suggestions? You wanna, got anything? Right now, anybody?
Just
Pat?
just a question, Mayor. So this is where we've got the house that doesn't want to be gone.
Correct, but.
So it's still incorporated. Am I missing it here in our little
You see where there's a little bit of a cutout, almost like a tooth?
in
Those
the
are
middle?
Yep, those are the properties that
ones.
are going to be remain. They're
Okay.
remaining. They're not going to be included in this consolidation.
And I guess just the question: at some point, does that get added to this? If they indeed would sell,
If
would
those-
they have to come back to us then? And
Yep.
okay,
Kind
Got
of
it.
moving along without them.
Awesome. Got it.
Anybody? Greg?
Will this in any way, I know other properties, there's been an issue, will this in any way landlock that property with the no access along Drexel?
This is something that's been discussed, and the driveway access would be for residential purposes, and at such time that the property would be proposed to be used for something other than residential, that would be something staff would have to work with them to resolve.
Ollie?
Oh, straightforward, I think.
Okay.
It has to happen to make it go.
Okay. I do have one comment and actually a request, if you'll take a look at your Plan Commission report. And one of the conditions is that the CSM is revised to incorporate a no access restriction along Drexel Avenue for all parcels. Okay? Just to explain this, the DOT, our traffic analysis is recommending not to have access on Drexel Avenue except for a key away. Okay? We want to give the applicant ample time to do an engineering study to see if it would be feasible, because they would like to obtain an entrance on Drexel. Now, again, our recommendation is to follow the state and not allow those accesses. But in this case, I think it's only fair for them to take a look at their properties, possible developments, and see if it's accessible through a key away. So I would like condition 1 stricken, and we can address that at council at another time. The council can take care of that. Brian, you want to weigh in on it? I'm sure you have an opinion.
I do. Engineering's concerned with this, and this is a safety issue for Drexel Avenue.
Yes. Don't disagree.
It doesn't meet site distances. It doesn't meet reaction times for getting off the ramp and getting into IKEA Way. So engineering is all aboard with no access on Drexel.
And they're still going to have to fight that fight at some. I mean, they're going to have a tough sell.
Mayor,
you're saying give an opportunity.
Opportunity to do the traffic analysis.
Yeah, I don't.
But again, I think it's, given the scope of the development that's going on around there, I personally think it's fair. But that's my request. We can take it up another time. We know staff's position on it, and again, it's
still have to get through the state anyway. So
whole thing.
right. So we're
No, it does not have to get through the
No.
state. The state doesn't have jurisdiction on this section of road. Now, using the FDM, which is the state design guidebook, there would not be an access permitted with the state reviewing this.
So I guess the next question, though, Mayor, if they came back with that, we would still have the ability to strike that down.
correct.
Similar to our earlier.
Whether here or at council.
Or at council. Okay. I don't see how you could have it.
So that's my request. So if the motion's made, I'd like you guys to.
X1.
Correct.
Well, just a quick question.
Yes.
What would cause us to say no if it's not approved by the state? Is that what you're saying?
Our engineering department is recommending, not to allow it. We're giving the applicant a chance to prove us wrong. I guess that's the easiest way
Do you feel acceptable with that if we knocked it out for now? And you still wouldn't, okay.
to do it. An engineer, he's got to stand by his principles, and I respect that. So.
Could you reword it to say no access if?
No, I'd
something?
prefer to just keep
Just
it out
take it
and we
off?
deal with it either at plan or council again.
So if we keep it in, you're going to vote against this?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Just preparing everybody, that's all.
I'll defer to the mayor on this one and let you guys fight it out later. Motion?
Yeah, motion.
Hey, Pat.
Carol moves the Plan Commission recommends the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Kevin Kennedy, Walden OC LLC for the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1848, 1850, and 1900 West Drexel Avenue and 7700 South IKEA Way be approved subject to the following conditions. One, that the CSM is revised to incorporate all wetlands and floodway, floodplain areas. Two, that all unused laterals are abandoned at the main in conformance with the Oak Creek water and sewer utility requirements. And three, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal, I forgot my readers, with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, no.
Clark, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Item 5D is a rezone of the properties we just discussed. It is submitted by Kevin Kennedy, Walden, OCLLC, to rezone the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1848, 1850, 1900 West Drexel Avenue from RS3 Single Family Residential to B6 Interchange Regional Retail District. No change to the floodway or the flood fringe. Carrie?
So this is to rezone the property in advance of pursuing a mixed-use development on the properties that we just discussed. 7700 South IKEA Way was rezoned to B6 in 2016. It was one of the very first parcels to incorporate that new zoning district. Existing parcels in the area are zoned for institutional, park, residential, commercial, and environmental uses. The B6 district is intended to provide for the orderly and attractive grouping of high-intensity retail, commercial, and mixed uses along the federal interstate highway system. And since the CSM that was just approved would incorporate all of those parcels, this is along I-94. Following consolidation and in consideration of the future mixed-use development plans, the parcel appears to be consistent with the B6 purpose statement. If the Plan Commission feels that the rezone is appropriate, a suggested motion has been made that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1848, 1850, and 1900 West Drexel Avenue be rezoned from RS3, Single Family Residential, to B6 Interstate Regional Retail District with no change to the floodway or flood fringe districts after a public hearing. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions from the commission? Okay.
Straightforward.
Motion.
So Dick will make a motion. The Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the properties at 1700, 1750, 1800, 1816, 1848, 1850, and 1900 West Drexel Avenue be rezoned from RS3 Single Family Residential to B6 Interstate Regional Retail District. There's no change to the FW, which is the floodway, or FF, the floodway fringe districts, after a public hearing.
Clark, seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Clark, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you. Next up, we have a rezone. Request by the City of Oak Creek to rezone portions of the property in 1920 West Drexel Avenue from RS3 Single Family Residential to I1 Institutional. No change will be to the flood fringe or the floodway. Carrie?
This is the city-owned parcel that is adjacent to IKEA Way and is currently being used for stormwater and public infrastructure purposes. And the request to rezone it is to make it more in compliance with what it's being used for. There was a proposal at one time to rezone it to the B6 district to be consistent with the properties that are next to it. However, because the property is not being proposed for development other than what may be needed for future infrastructure projects, I1 Institutional seemed to be the closest that would allow us to do that. So if the Plan Commission is comfortable with this rezone proposal, the suggested motion is that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the property at 1920 West Drexel Avenue be rezoned from RS3 Single Family Residential to I1 Institutional with no change to the FW floodway or FF flood fringe districts after a public hearing. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions from commission? Greg?
I just have a quick question. That's a property with the house still on it, correct?
I'm sorry?
Is there still a house on that?
There's no house on it. It's currently owned by the city and
Right by
has,
the road?
Yeah, it's right by the road.
it has
Around that.
stormwater infrastructure on
The
it.
farmhouse is the next lot to the east, correct?
Yes.
I mean, the house was torn down, so we construct the first phase of IKEA Way. So,
From this
yeah.
lot, okay.
So it's now just, it's compensating storage for floodway and the actual road that's in that lot.
Thank you for that, Brian. Any other questions? Fred?
Okay, no, I have no questions. I just was going to
Okay.
make the motion. that's
Oh,
all.
go ahead, Fred. Please do. Motion.
Okay, Seifert moves that the planning commission recommend to the common council that the property at 1920 West Drexel Avenue be rezoned from RS3, single-family resident, to I1 institutional, no change to the FW floodway or FF flood fringe district after a public hearing.
Chandler, seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnson, I.
Clark, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski.
Pearl,
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
They go by Q on that. I'd be offsides constantly. Item F, review of proposed amendment to the official map for a portion of the northeast quarter of section 16, mapped unimproved right-of-way affecting the properties at 928 East Forest Hill. Pete?
My turn.
All right.
All right. Got to earn my pay somehow, right? All right. The applicant is requesting an amendment to the official map to reconfigure the future roadway to allow the construction of a single-family home in the northeast portion of the parcel. As of right now, on this illustration on the screen ahead of you, in front of you, is the officially mapped roads. To the north, it tees off to the east as well as to the west, and also there's a cul-de-sac on the southeastern portion of the property. So what they want to be able to do is remove the area in purple here that's with the arrow, bring out the zoom here, and reconfigure the official map road to look like the area that's highlighted in green. This does preserve the connectivity between adjacent parcels, and then also does provide an area in that northeast corner for the applicant to propose to build a home on that parcel. No, the way it's reconfigured does not negatively impact or reduce the development potential to abutting properties. So if the Plan Commission feels that the amendment is acceptable, staff suggests the motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the official map for a portion of the northeast quarter of Section 16, the mapped unimproved right-of-way affecting the property at 928 East Forest Hill Avenue, be amended as illustrated after public hearing.
Thank you, Pete. Questions?
Yeah, what size is that lot, Pete, that we're talking, I mean, the total area?
I don't have that answer off the top of my head. I can look it up pretty quickly.
At a half acre, an acre?
Whole thing is
Acres.
6?
The audience indicated 6 acres.
You got that recorded?
Pete, where is this in relationship to 800 East Forest Hill? Is this like behind it then?
800 is located. So we got 928 is here. 800 would be to the west of the Oak Leaf Trail. Oak Leaf Trail goes on the diagonal here. And then you have the numbers go down to 0 as they head west.
Where does Shepherd Avenue come out at?
Shepherd Avenue is at this intersection right here.
Pete, your cursor's not following. where you're
Oh,
at.
that's right. I forget. Sorry, we got to work with IT on this. It looks really good on my screen. I'll just let you know that. It makes perfect sense. So let me look at the screen here. This is the intersection where my cursor is now. Here's Shepherd, here's Forest Hill. This is 928. Numbers go lower as you head west.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, the road almost makes it look more desirable to develop.
Yeah, I think it's a better
Better concept.
conceptually, and there's no neighbors that
I had a neighbor to the southeast, had concerns about the possibility of the road going in. That is not the case. This is just modifying lines on a map so that the parcel owner can build a house, because when we have the officially mapped roads, when we look at building permits or any project development, we have to treat those roads if they exist. And so the way it's configured right now, the applicant would have been regularly, limited to the area outside this cul-de-sac. They were looking to look closer up to Avonshine Park. Back in, I believe, the late 90s, there was, if you can I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little curve and there's a real skinny strip going down, straight down. The city acquired a 30-foot right-of-way. That's why this person can build even a parcel, build a house right there, because there's a partial right-of-way. No further division of these parcels can be done until the road actually goes through. So this would be the only house that would be able to go on this parcel. So even though the road is being reconfigured, it's not as if all of a sudden they can start carving up that parcel for additional roads.
All right. Motion.
Clark moves that the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council that the official map for a portion of the northeast quarter of Section 16 mapped unimproved right-of-way affecting the property at 928 East Forest Hill Avenue be amended as illustrated after a public hearing.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Dunstan, aye.
Thriller, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Item G, 5G, plan review. Review site, building, and landscape and lighting plans submitted by EVCAP LLC for a multi-tenant commercial development on the property at 120 West Town Square Way. Carrie?
The proposal is for a 3-building, multi-tenant development on this parcel, which is part of Drexel Town Square. On your screen right now is the overall development plan for this parcel. You can see that the buildings are sited on the eastern portion of the property. Parking is located in the center portion of the property. The requirements for parking are different for the proposed uses. The buildings could be for commercial purposes, for restaurant purposes, which are listed as fast casual, or for service type uses. In the PUD, fast food requirements for parking are 20 per 1,000 gross square feet, which would be about 304. Sit-down restaurants require 8 to 12 per 1,000 gross square feet, which would be 121 to 183. And retail or commercial office uses would require 3.5 to 5 per 1,000 gross square feet, which is about 54 to 77. Now, obviously, there's going to be a mix of uses in these tenant spaces. The applicant has explained to us that right now, one of the spaces may be for optical, and that is for the southern portion of the 3rd building, which I'm going to say is the southernmost building. For jewelry, which is in the northernmost building, small electronics, which is in the southern portion of the center building, and fast casual for the remaining tenant spaces. On the plans, 100 parking stalls have been provided. There may be a slight issue with some encroachment into the existing bioswale easement, but I will defer to engineering for questions regarding that. The estimate is that there would be 20 to 25 employees per tenant space. There is no current information as to how many employees would be on site during peak hours. However, peak hours for fast casual restaurants and possibly some of the other tenants would probably be around that noontime lunch rush. The anticipated hours of operation for all of these tenant users right now is 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Sunday. There are pedestrian connections and bike racks shown on the plans, as well as patio areas in between the buildings. And it looks like the applicant is ready to have their presentation before the Plan Commission, so I'll wrap up my comments. Deliveries would be on the west. Entrances are proposed on the east and west portions of the building, so you can enter from West Town Square Way or from South Howell Avenue if you are walking down the sidewalk. There are 2 dumpster enclosure locations. One would be 16 by 12, and that's in the northwest portion near the bioswale, and a 25 by 12, which would be south of that parking strip on the west side. The proposed building materials for the dumpster enclosures would be modular brick to match the proposed buildings with pre-finished corrugated metal gates. There was a landscape plan that was submitted with these plans showing the proposed landscaping for the entire property. There is a mixed landscape, building and landscape zone that has been identified along Howell Avenue in the PUD, and a landscape zone is along Town Square Way. There are certain portions of the proposed landscape plan that would require revision, and staff will continue to work with the applicant on what will be required. Lighting is proposed to be the Guardco Pureform fixtures that are required by DTS. There are elevations that have been submitted, which you should see on your screen right now, and that the applicant will go over in further detail, but the proposed building materials include a mix of fiber cement, which is shown as vintage wood in 2 separate colors, glass and modular brick in 2 colors. There is 1 overhead door on the north portion of building 2. Canopies, there are 2 types that are proposed over the entrances for buildings 1 and 3, and those are composite. Metal canopies are proposed over the tenant entries in building 2, which is that center building. Staff recommends incorporating the canopy element over all glass areas, and we did talk with the applicant's consultant about that. And there is a condition of approval that staff has recommended for the proposed brick to be compliant with code. And that's for the modular brick would be the standard thickness. Materials percentages have been updated since the staff report. The updated elevations were part of your packets, so there is a little bit of a disconnect there. Each building is required to meet minimum glazing requirements. Entry and special condition facades need to have a minimum of 30% clear glazing. Non-entry facades have to have a minimum of 20% clear glazing. And they need to be constructed with acceptable building materials. Now, the primary building material for each facade, especially entry and special conditions facades, staff is stating should not be fiber cement, so there should be more brick or possibly decorative elements, maybe even some stone. If that would be incorporated into that, staff would be appreciative. Signage is shown for reference only. Master sign plan requirements do apply. That will be submitted at a later date for Plan Commission review, as will detailed tenant signage. There is a suggested motion that is in your packets, but with that, I will turn it over to the applicant's representative for their presentation.
Welcome. Please, name and address, please.
Hi, Jeff Stowe, 4417 North Murray Avenue in Shorewood, Wisconsin. I'm the architect for the project. I've got one of the brokers here representing the developer, Tom Treader. I'll just hopefully resume this and get the slideshow going here. Like Carrie said, she did a pretty good job explaining the project. It's a multi-tenant development, mixed use with some retailers and some, at this point, some fast casual tenants throughout the development. We'll start with the building elevations here. On your screens now are the 2, basically, I guess, the front and back of the development. The west elevations would face the parking lot or Drexel Town Square Way. I forget the exact roadway name there, West Town Square Way. And the east elevations, the building there faces Howell Avenue. And we've incorporated, as Carrie states, a mix of brick, the wood look fiber cement panels, glazing, 2 types of canopies, as she said. And I believe on the revised elevations that I submitted that are in the packets and are on your screen now, we've met the glazing requirements for these buildings facing the parking lot and Drexel Avenue. Howell Avenue. the north and south elevations. With the situation of the three buildings, we've created some courtyard patio elements that'll have some landscape plantings in there in the bigger concrete planters, and some areas that when the restaurants go in there, they'll be able to have some outdoor dining in those areas. Now I realize that some of that may be a conditional approval for individual occupancies, and we come back for that. Next slide is showing a building perspective from the southwest from Town Square Way. And then that's just a close-up. You're able to see on the buildings that the main entries are identified with brick masonry elements in two colors, one like a light cream white, and then the other entries are identified more with a gray or onyx colored masonry. And then we're breaking those facades up with the canopy elements and then the wood-like fiber siding. The one's more of a weathered oak look. That's the lighter material. And then the other one's like a darker, it's called bark. And I believe some of these materials have been used throughout Drexel Town Square Way and are in some of the other developments. I believe the Starbucks across the street on Drexel uses a similar material as well. And then this perspective would give you an idea of the feel for like the patio element with the bike racks, and then there'd be some room for some patio furniture out there by the tenants as they'd come in and be used for dining and so forth. Another view of the overall development from the northwest along Town Square Way. And then just another close-up. And then this is a view from Howell Avenue from the northeast. And again, Howell Avenue from the southeast. And that's the end of the slideshows, and I can answer other questions or have the civil engineers here as well that may be able to address some of the concerns engineering has on the site, if any, and we'll go from there.
Do you have questions for the applicants? Pat?
I think buildings look good like the rest of it. I think we've hashed these things out to the point where we know what they're supposed to look like. So
Great.
I think we're pretty close.
Fred, Chris?
Just have a question. Oh,
Go ahead, Fred.
it looks like there's no entrance on the east side of the buildings off of Howell, correct?
Correct. There's a few doors. The one tenant in the middle building, which is I guess the second, has a potential of two tenants, possibly three. And there's some egress doors only for emergency egress, but most of all the customer entrances are off the west. There are two sidewalks that cut through the patios that would link, and there may be some customer entrances to the tenants that face those patios off those doors, but those would more likely be access doors. If a fast casual restaurant had some outdoor seating, the customers would be able to access the patios through there.
Chair Chandler, anything?
Yes, I have a question for Carrie. So the materials do not meet the requirements?
Staff is recommending that more brick or stone elements be incorporated as opposed to the Nichi-Ha panels. We do have one building that does incorporate the Nichi-Ha panels in DTS more prominently, and that's the PetSmart Mattress Firm building. There were a couple of Nichi-Ha panel elements that were incorporated into the building that houses Five Guys, Orange Leaf, and Potbelly. But for the most part, what we're looking for are more stone, brick, decorative masonry, glass, those kinds of materials. We have seen the metal panel on the other sides of Forge and Flare facing the parking lots, and we've allowed those to go in with a 3/4 majority approval of the Plan Commission. But staff's recommendation is that with the prominence of these buildings along Howell Avenue, that they incorporate more of those brick and stone elements.
So does item number 2 and 3 take care of that, or?
No, item 2 is just requiring that the code meet a minimum standard per,
3 and 4.
right? So, number 3 would get to it, but not number 2. And number 4 would also get to that.
Okay, so is the applicant okay with adding more masonry?
Yes, we've been working with staff on the development of this, and we're open to incorporating some more masonry or stone to get the desired look.
Thank you.
Yes. Looks good.
Right.
I just want to clarify, fast casual is not the same as fast food, correct? So there's no proposed drive. It doesn't look like there's any drive-throughs, but no drive-throughs, correct?
Correct, no drive-throughs.
Yes. Are you able to give any specifics on who you have in mind or who might be coming in already?
Tom Treader with Founders 3 Real Estate Services, 1000 North Water, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We can't give specific tenant names because no leases are signed at this time, but I can give you a brief overview of the quality and the category of the tenants I think are mentioned briefly in the package, but high quality jewelry store that really likes the community with Oak Creek and wanted to be here, and part of the reason why this project is coming together. Fast casual restaurant, no drive-through obviously, but it's a casual dining restaurant that will be first to the area, and are very excited about this area. Electronics will be a new concept by this particular tenant for this area, and then the optical store is also a high-quality national optical store. And then the other space is unspoken for at this time.
Thank you.
Carrillo? Johnston?
Just a heads up for the applicant when they're coming through with the plans. I believe underneath the trash enclosure on the northwest corner of the site, there's going to be a storm sewer manhole that was missed on the plan. So that'll need to be addressed and probably move where that trash enclosure is.
Okay.
Hickman?
And then, Carrie, you talked about the landscaping, some minor changes that you're going to coordinate with them. Is that along Howe Avenue? I mean, I'm concerned with Howe Avenue. Obviously, I want it to really look sharp along there.
There are going to be some considerations throughout the site, but we will talk about Howell Avenue, making sure that what's proposed there meets the requirements for the perimeter landscaping that is part of the PUD, making sure that it coordinates with the existing landscaping and the proposed landscape plans for the proposal for the northern, the lot to the north. So making sure that we have a continuous kind of landscaping treatment along Howell Avenue. And then there are some requirements along Town Square Way as well. So we'll just continue to work with the applicant to make sure that those items are addressed.
And also, I noticed that you have a patio between tenant 1 and 2. And then the way our drawing shows, and then a patio between 3 and 4. But there will be nothing for tenant 5, which would be the south end.
Correct, and that space for tenant 5 right now is identified as the optical retailer, and they don't need a outdoor area.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's nice to see some retail. Hopefully it's something unique to the area, and same with the dining choices. Nice not to see the drive-throughs. The patios are a little unique. We haven't quite seen that concept, so very good. Just any fire concerns back there, Mike? He's indicating no, so we're good to go. Motion.
Clerk will move that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans submitted by EVCAP LLC for the property located at 120 West Town Square Way with the following conditions. Number 1, that all building and fire codes are met. Number 2, that the exterior brick veneer meets the minimum 4-inch thick requirement per code. Number 3, that the building materials for each building are revised to incorporate more brick, stone, decorative masonry, and/or glass as the primary building materials. Number 4, that detailed building materials calculations for each elevation of each building are provided for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. Number 5, that all revised plans, site, building, landscaping, etc., are submitted in digital and paper formats for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. Number 6, that a master sign plan for the buildings is reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission prior to review of any tenant signage. Number 7, that detailed plans for tenant signage are reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission. Number 8, that final photometric and lighting plans indicating the approved luminaire type, pole type, color, and height for Drexel Town Square are submitted for final approval by the Director of Community Development upon written recommendation of the electrical inspector prior to the issuance of building permits. Number 9, that all mechanical equipment, ground, building, and rooftop is screened from view. Number 10, that plans addressing grading, drainage, and stormwater quality, including the use of stormwater best management practices, are approved by the city engineer prior to the issuance of building permits. And number 11, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility.
Dickman, second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Roll aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Good luck, gentlemen. Welcome to Oak Creek.
Thank you.
Item H is a zoning text amendment. It's to review section 170501 of the city's zoning ordinance regarding the size of an accessory structure in residential zoning districts. I'm going to give that to Pete.
Yes, thank you. Over the years, staff as well as the Board of Zoning Appeals have had requests to build accessory structures that exceed the maximum size in a residential district. And staff did present this to the Plan Commission back in 2011, made a recommendation to approve larger buildings. Unfortunately, when it went to Common Council, there were some questions and it was held and hasn't been brought back until tonight. And so before I walk through what is being proposed, just to give you a little bit of background, the minimum dimensions for a garage is 10 foot by 20 foot. And imagine a 2-car, 20 by 20, 30 by 20, so on. When you have a 20-foot deep garage, you can fit a car, probably fit a wagon. It gets a little tougher when you start going to a van or a pickup truck or any other type of recreational vehicles. And so right now for properties under a half acre, a resident can build 2 720 square foot accessory buildings. In your report, I used the example of 36 by 20. So basically a 3-car garage is what you can build on a less than half acre. For over a half acre, you're allowed to have up to 75% of your home, but no larger than 1,000 square feet. So basically, you can allow a 50 by 20 square foot building, so a 5-car garage. Sounds pretty large. Unfortunately, not everybody likes the 20-foot depth. Usually they go 22, maybe as deep as 24 to accommodate storage, lawnmowers, snow blowers, bikes, you name it, or just even the longer vehicles that are out there today, the SUVs and whatnot. So staff has taken a look at what was proposed back in 2011 and has compared it to what other communities have nearby. Included in your report are examples of other communities. Some don't allow larger than 900 square feet. Some allow up to 1,000, or Franklin allows up to 1,200 square feet, but it has to be made out of brick or masonry. We have New Berlin. They have it where if you're less than 2 acres, the combined combination of all accessory structures is 840. So what we have currently is maybe not on the small side, but definitely not on the large sides. So what staff is proposing is that for less than a half acre, increasing the maximum size to 1,000 square feet, with the caveat that it can't be more than 75% of the house. So that means you have to have at least about between 1,300 and 1,400 square foot home to have 1,000 square foot garage. Now, the reason bringing it a little bit larger is that we have had concerns from residents that said, yeah, we can build 270 square foot buildings, but it's too much or it's too expensive. It's easier just to make just a slightly larger garage and just have one building. Now, the way we have it set up, in addition to the changing the sizes, is we do have codes in the ordinance that states that no more than 40% of a residential lot can be developed. So if you have a 1,400 square foot house and you put a 1,000 square foot building, that can't eat up more than 40% of the lot. So it should keep the amount of backyards being eaten up by accessory buildings to a minimum. Also, we have a 15-foot setback that's in place right now for any structure over 720 square feet. So if you're looking at a 1/4 acre lot, you have a 15-foot rear, 15-foot side, and you have a 20-foot setback from the principal building. That's going to squeeze you and not be able to let you just build really massive accessory structures on smaller lots in the city. So that's why we're proposing for section 170501 sub B6A that for under a half acre, it's that 75% rule, but no larger than 1,000 square feet. As for over an acre, which is section 170501 sub B6B, is that for over a half acre, you could go up to 1,200 square feet. So you could build two 1,200 square foot buildings. So we're making it pretty large, but you have to have a pretty large parcel in order to do that. By doing that, we basically keep the 3 and 5 car garage limit, but we now are being able to go a little bit deeper instead of just wider. So staff recommends that, Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that section 170501B6A and section 170501B6B be amended to allow for larger accessory structures for residentially zoned properties as proposed after a public hearing.
Thank you, Pete. And I know that was a lot. I actually asked Pete to review this. Mayor Bolender had looked at it years ago and made it all the way to almost home plate, but I think we differed on the size, and that 1,200 number seems significant. I think former Mayor Bolender wanted it larger. Being from the farm, he wanted the need for bigger, and I don't think anybody went that big. I think Pete's restrictions there on lot size and setbacks really help. Before I open it up to the council, though, we do have somebody that's been waiting patiently. Nikki Neal would like to speak.
7249 South Pennsylvania Avenue. He said it all, so I'm all good. If this goes, I'm great.
That was short and sweet. Very good. So I'll open it up to the commission for questions, comments.
I don't see any problems.
Nothing?
Seems to fit.
No, and again, this was driven by a homeowner that wanted to improve their home, and their home was rather mature. It was older, and they just weren't allowed to go any bigger. And homes built back in the 30s and 40s just didn't accommodate today's needs. So I want to thank the applicants for being very patient with this, because it started out sometime this summer, and it took a while. A little bit was my fault because I kind of forgot to push it through a little bit. But in either case, I think it's appropriate, and it really shows the need when residents step up and point out when it's time to look at our codes and modernize them. So thank you. So, with that, motion.
Carl moves the. Go ahead, Fred.
You got something?
You got it.
I don't want to get moving. Carl moves the commission recommends the common council at section 17.0501B6A and 17.051B6B be amended to allow for larger accessory structures for residentially zoned properties as proposed after a public hearing.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Lorick, aye. Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And thanks for the patience. No fun when you're item H. Last, informational item only, regarding the request for proposals to update the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. Pete, or Carrie?
I'll take this one.
Oh, wow.
So to close out the evening, just wanted to bring the Plan Commission up to speed with our proposal to have the comprehensive plan and the zoning code completely rehauled. And that means we have submitted a request for proposals that was published on the website Friday. So we'll be looking for Plan Commissioners to be participating in both of these updates, and more details will be to come. If you have any questions, the RFP is available online, giving you a little bit of detail on what we're looking for. The tentative schedule is we've released the RFP. There will be a mandatory pre-plan meeting for all of those who are interested in submitting their proposals on November 8th. It will be here at 10 a.m. in the Common Council chambers. The deadline for questions to be submitted to staff will be November 10th, and staff will provide responses and/or addenda to the RFP by November 17th. The proposal submission deadline is December 1st by 4 p.m. Selection committee reviews, which we will be asking for participation, those will be complete January 12th. We will be scheduling consultant interviews January 23rd through the 25th. The selection would be by council on February 20th, and notice of that selection will be February 21st. We're hoping to have the entire thing completed within a year, I believe. So it's going to move rather quickly, but we were very fortunate that we were able to sit down and agree that we did need a little bit of consultant expertise on these updates and to get them moving forward. So while the comprehensive plan has been in a constant state of update and we've done some incremental changes to the zoning code, this is going to be a complete overhaul that we're looking forward to.
Long overdue.
Great. Questions for Carrie? Comments? No? Okay, seeing none. Adjournment.
Perillo moves to adjourn at 8:07.
Sikowski will second.
Roll call.
Seifert, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Perillo, aye.
Clark, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye. Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. I'd especially like to thank our staff for the professionalism they showed in a very foggy first item there, to say the least. It's very difficult when we have that, and kudos to the commission too. Very professional. I think you showed very good judgment on that. And thanks to our IT guy, as always, for helping us out. Again, I wish everybody a safe and happy Halloween. Your little ghosts and goblins will be coming on Sunday between 4 and 6, so please keep your porch lights on for them. And if you're driving your vehicles, look out for them. And as always, please discover and celebrate Oak Creek. Good night. Thank you.